Well, as you guys have probably been able to tell if you're paying attention to American politics, the Republican-stacked by Trump Supreme Court of the United States has recently made it very clear what its intentions are. You see, if you're a Supreme Court justice, you have either a lifetime position or a position until you decide to step down. I think they can be impeached, but I might be wrong. Correct me if I'm right or wrong, chat. I don't know. I think they can be impeached. It's like really hard, right? Practically impossible and has never happened, right? One has been impeached. One has ever been impeached, apparently. Okay, so it's been tried. All right. That said, though, it is very bad that the Supreme Court of the United States is stacked with a Republican majority. The reason for this is that the Supreme Court is the highest of courts, period. Like, it is the highest court in the entire land. The only person kind of above them, sort of, is the president, but not really, because the president is just them of a different branch. It's like there's checks and balances. So the president can kind of check and balance the Supreme Court, but they can also check and balance him. So sometimes it just ends up resulting in like a stun lock, and it's kind of fucked. It's really confusing, if I'm being honest with you guys. But the important thing is that a fair amount of the current Supreme Court justices currently sitting are demonic ghouls. They've already taken away Roe versus Wade and eliminated the guaranteed right for access to an abortion federally. And they've made it clear that their next target is gay marriage and other gay rights. And they've also made it clear that their next target after that is, guess what? And this will affect everybody, no matter who you are, except maybe a very small portion of the population. This will affect you. Their next target is contraception. And the funny part of that is that contraception is the best way to prevent abortion, and yet they want to ban abortion with the claim that their goal is to stop abortions from happening. So why ban contraception and restrict that if the goal is to stop abortions? Oh, it's because the goal is to make it so if people do have sex out of wedlock, the chances of pregnancy are practically like, you know, guaranteed, and so then they have to get married, and then, you know, you can push your conservative worldview on more basically kids, right? It's why in conservative states the rate of child marriage is so high, and Republicans fight so hard to preserve child marriage in said red states. Anyway, we're going to start with this article that is very relevant to this particular topic. Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization was a landmark decision addressing whether the Constitution protects the right to an abortion. In Dobbs, the Supreme Court reviewed the constitutionality of Mississippi's Gestational Age Act, a law banning most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy, with exceptions for medical emergencies and fetal abnormalities. In divided opinion, the court upheld the Mississippi law and overturned Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey. This is a pretty bad ruling. I mean, it's pretty clear that this is in line with what the Republicans have planned overall for restricting the access for... I understand this does not necessarily apply specifically to women, but in what they are doing, they specifically want it to, affect women most. Like, they are doing it to hurt women. They want to make it so that specifically women do not have the ability to have sexual freedom. Sexual freedom is a word that can mean a lot of things. And what I mean when I say sexual freedom is basically the way that guys have lived their lives without any social pushback for like a century plus at this point. If you're a guy, you could basically live your life like how I did. I graduated high school. I got a job, saved up money. Mind you, not thinking about relationships or anything like that. I bought a computer setup, started streaming, and then spent, years of my life dedicated to work, and then I got into a relationship, that didn't work out, and now I'm back to being single, and, nobody bats an eye at that. As a guy, arguably, I'm seen as more in my peak once I hit, my mid-30s, and I've got more wealth and, value built up, right? But for women, the conservative ideal of women that has been pushed in our society and has been sort of like a lingering cancer is that women basically start expiring at, like, depending on the conservative you talk to, like 14 to 16 years old. Like, a lot of conservatives outright admit that the ideal age of consent to them would be 16 or 14 years old, or when they have their first period. Matt Walsh types and whatnot, yeah. So, like, with that in mind, you can kind of put together a good picture of what they want. They don't want women to have that level of freedom. Men have a lot more ability to prevent having to become a father than women have the ability to prevent becoming a mother. That's just simply the fact. If a woman gets pregnant, she is in an infinitely worse position than the guy is. The guy can much more easily run off and abandon the whole situation than the mother can. The mother, at the very least, has to carry the baby to term, right? Assuming abortion isn't an option. That said, though, they want to make it so that young women, if they have sex, are locked into marriage as the only reasonable option for their lives going forward. And of course, they want to teach abstinence-only education, which statistically, scientifically doesn't work, and teenagers are still having sex with each other even when you do abstinence-only education. And it still leads to pregnancy. And they know that, because the goal is to have tons of teen girls getting pregnant, and for their only recourse to get married, because that's the goal. Abortion, contraception, these are things that give these young women second chances if like they end up getting pregnant or possibly almost getting pregnant, right? Conservatives operate under the idea that sex is this, like, sacred thing that should only be done either, like, in wedlock, which is some magic bullshit, or if you are ready to have a kid. I have unironically seen conservatives on podcasts argue against free lunches for kids in schools, and their response to the free lunch thing is, if you can't afford to feed your kid, then why did you have a kid? That's their response. The go-to conservative response to parents that say, we want our kids to have free school lunches is, if you can't afford to feed your own kid, or you can't afford to watch your own kid, then you shouldn't have had kids. Which extends to, you shouldn't have had sex. They believe that as a teenager, you should just magically have the discipline to not have sex. With no, of course, you wouldn't have contraception or abortion as an option in their ideal world, but teenagers would just have the godlyhood and the strong moral conviction to not have sex till marriage and until they have got the financial stability to raise a family. But let's be real. Let's be real. The real reason they push for this kind of thing is because guess what not having access to abortion and contraception results in? Out-of-wedlock pregnancy. Out-of-wedlock pregnancy results in poor families. Poor families results in crime coming from said family at a statistically higher rate. Maybe it's the father running off or doing crime in order to keep the family, like, afloat. Maybe the kid grows up and ends up getting involved in crime because it's a bad neighborhood and they just don't have money. Maybe the mom has to get involved in crime. It could be sex work or whatever, right? Like, that results in more people going to prison. Who is it again that benefits from there being a shit ton of Americans in prison? Once again, weird how all these things kind of circle back in on each other, huh? Really weird how these all circle in on each other. It's almost like there's a benefit these conservatives might have to perpetuating these systems in which poverty is continued and crime is a almost inherited thing within families because of the situation you're forced to grow up in, with no way out. prison being a very likely future for a lot of people, depending on the neighborhood you grew up in. Your zip code is a pretty damn good determinant of whether or not you are going to see the inside of a jail cell at some point in your life. In America, that is just a simple reality. That particular ruling is very relevant because even though it happened a while ago, that was a few months ago, it's relevant to something that occurred literally just a few days ago. Could birth control access be at risk in North Carolina? Democrats say yes, but the GOP disagrees, because of course they do. Let me take a sippy. With North Carolina's new 12-week abortion ban currently set to take effect Saturday, legislative Democrats are calling for the Republican majority to back a proposal guaranteeing future access to reliable methods of contraception. Republicans dismiss that concern as a scare tactic. So, of course, the Republicans who claim they just want abortions to not happen, and they're just looking for any solution that will prevent abortions, have the option of contraception being there. But no, they won't protect that. They are unwilling to vote to pass anything that will protect the rights to access to contraception, even though that would actually result in there not being as many abortions. It's about control. A discharge petition is a parliamentary way to remove a bill from committee, but it requires a majority vote, which Democrats lack in the Senate. The petitions are rarely successful and are more often filed as a protest. While some Republicans have tried to assure the public that they're passing common sense or mainstream laws, not many of us feel confident that the rights we do have left will not also be attacked. Grafstein D. Wake said, Grafstein, who's a Democrat, he's a Democrat representative, these fears are valid. I always hate how articles write, like, representatives' names. It's always last name, comma, D or R, or, like, I guess they have I for independent, I would assume. And then I assume G for Green Party, maybe. And maybe L for Libertarian Party. I don't even know if they break it up that much, but like D or R and then a dash and then the first name. It's really weird. I don't like it. It's always really bizarre to have to like read that aloud, you know? In the Dobbs decision sent down from the U.S. Supreme Court a year ago, an opinion filed by the Justice Clarence Thomas cited other rulings that were based on the same overturned argument as Roe v. Wade. Grafstein noted that Thomas's list included Griswold v. Connecticut, the 1965 ruling that guaranteed women access to contraception, as well as the rulings overturning bans on same-sex sexual relationships and same-sex marriage. That's right, Clarence Thomas has already indicated he is going after the existing rulings that have set the precedent for protecting access to contraception. They have already made it clear contraception is a target, and they're going to be going after it. Can you imagine an America in which, like, the Zoomers are now, like, voting age, and nearly 90% of Americans are, like, aggressively left-wing, and yet because of the Supreme Court, we may see gay marriage no longer legal, abortion illegal, contraception no longer federally protected, being trans no longer federally protected, erosions of literally every civil rights policy. Like, we might see that happen in the 2020s because of nothing other than the Supreme Court. Any substantive due process decision is demonstrably erroneous. We have a duty to correct the error established in those precedents, Thomas wrote in his opinion. Yeah, so basically he's saying that any ruling that came before the current like lineup of court justices that are mostly Republican are not valid, and they are going to be dismantling many of them. Grafstein said she's calling on Republicans to back her bill because of the threat that states would be empowered by the Supreme Court to limit access to or use of contraception, just as Justice Thomas has foreshadowed. Republicans say Democrats are just trying to scare voters. Senate Leader Phil Berger, Republican from Rockingham, said he wasn't aware of any efforts among North Carolina Republican lawmakers to limit contraception. The only people I've heard talking about that are Democrats, Berger said. It's just another instance of trying to scare the public that something may happen that no one has made any serious attempt or has contemplated moving forward with. They're denying it, though. Even though Clarence Thomas one of the Republican Supreme Court justices that dominate the Supreme Court, the highest court in all the land, have actively indicated they plan to dismantle the ruling that already set the precedent that was protecting access to contraception. So they're denying the thing that they are actively already indicating they plan to do, which tells you they don't want us knowing what they plan to do. They don't want us to know that they plan to go after contraception. Because the reality of it is, here is how it would go, ideally for the Supreme Court justices, if they could get rid of contraception rights. We would wake up one morning to just find out it's happened. That's what they want. They want us to just wake up and check Twitter, and that's how we find out it happened. The only reason we found out Roe v. Wade was going to be repealed was because it got leaked. We only found out about Roe v. Wade because it got leaked. We could literally just wake up tomorrow and find out that contraceptive rights in America have been federally dissolved by the Supreme Court. We only knew about the Roe v. Wade thing before it happened because of a leak. Normally it just comes out of nowhere as far as the public is concerned. That is how the Supreme Court operates. And you have to remember, these Supreme Court justices don't have to worry about popularity. They don't have to worry about getting reelected. They have that position for life, so either until they die or they resign. They're accountable to no one but the president and a few other very niche branches of the government. We do have a checks and balance system, but it operates more as a stalemate system than checks and balances. They've already, affirmative action was already on the chopping block, yeah. I'm just trying to get ahead with this one, because the affirmative action thing's already happened. That just happened. We just woke up and found out, oh, affirmative action is gone. No better system to replace it, by the way. I just got here, Zan doing a segment right now. Yes, we're talking about how the Republicans have contraceptive rights in their sights, and very soon, you guys may not be able to, have legal access guaranteed to contraceptives. Condoms, birth control, Plan B. Say goodbye to that if you're in a red state. That's their goal. This is their motivation, okay? The Supreme Court can dissolve federal protections for certain rights. Once the federal protections for certain rights have been dissolved, then on a state level, the red states have full carte blanche to make whatever rule in regards to that they want within their state borders. Obviously, there can be exceptions, such as if there are indigenous nations within those borders that can set their own rules and laws, and they have their own police departments and stuff, and their own governments and all that good shit. But barring that, within the state bounds, they would be able to enforce whatever draconian, insane, literally pre-1950s America-style laws they want. No, they're going to do it nationally and force it on blue states. That's the end game, but the actual, extremely realistic, you should be fucking scared, very possibly soon reality is that Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, you could go down the list. These states in particular, Texas, once the federal protections for these things are gone due to the Supreme Court's power, then these red states can turn their individual governments into essentially mini fascist dictatorships. Indiana's a good one, yep. Michigan is hit or miss, I think. This is bad. This is very worrying. I know that the topic of abortion is very boring to a lot of lefties. We are not talking about abortion here. To be honest, I think abortion's already a lost issue. I think the Republicans have pretty much are on track to destroy access to abortion rights in red states. Entirely. It's just, I don't think anytime soon there's any saving that. Contraception is the thing you guys need to be really scared about. Because if you're in a red state right now, and your town or your city, by the way, you can be saved from these, if you're in a red state and you can't move, you could be saved by being in a town that has a blue mayor. That is how important your on-the-ground local electoral politics are. If your governor of your state passes some insane fucking laws after the Supreme Court dissolves protections federally, your mayor has local power to enforce local laws. So your town can be accepting of LGBT people, depending on the particular state and stuff like that. How? Depends on the state. If you vote blue in your local elections, you've got the right judges in your town. Judges are a big one. Guys, I cannot stress how important it is to vote for good Democrat, like, down-to-earth, like, decent-seeming people as your local judges. Hey, chat, you know that story we covered recently where that trans girl wasn't able to walk the stage for her graduation at her high school because the dress code? And she took it to the local court for her town, and the judge was a Republican piece of shit who shot her down, and she wasn't able to walk at her graduation. That story could have literally gone differently simply by that having been a Democrat judge. That is the level of a difference you can make by voting blue on a mayoral and local town judge level. Hell, there's even, like, your HOA. You might live in an HOA area and stuff like that. There's just... Get involved with local government, okay? It affects you. It seems like it's such small fish that it doesn't matter. It's literally your local government. It affects you the most of all. It affects you way more, arguably, than who the president is, I'd say. I would actually say, if you're in a red state right now, you should care more about who your local mayor and judges are than who the president is. Not that you shouldn't care who the president is, but you should be more worried about your local judge or mayor than who the president is, because that is going to have a more demonstrable and direct effect on your life as a potential, like, LGBT person, a woman, a person of color, whatever it may be, in that area. Please get invested in local politics. The electoral makes a difference. It really, really does. Sheriffs! Oh my god. Sheriffs are a big deal. Listen. A-Capital, but listen. If you could pick between Rick Grimes being your local sheriff or Joe Apaprio, whatever his name was, who would you want to be your local sheriff? Rick Grimes or Joe Arpaio? I rest my case.